Hello friends, in today's video I'm going to be giving you a list of the essential tools you need to start leatherwork. This will be a comprehensive list and guide of exactly what you're going to need in your arsenal to get started in this fantastic craft. If you're new here, welcome. I'm a master leather artisan based in the UK. If you find this video useful, please don't forget to like, leave a comment and subscribe, as it really helps the channel grow. If you're already a subscriber, welcome back and thank you so much for joining me today. Let's get started, shall we? Alright guys, so in no particular order, here are the 7 tools that are entirely essential for starting leatherwork. Coming in at number 1, and again, no particular order, we have a Palo Santo edge beveler. These are super important when you're working with vegetable tan leather because they help round over the edge and give that perfectly domed finish to your edge. I have spent a lot of money and a lot of time using crappy, poor quality edge bevelers in my time. Really bad idea. I started off with one it came in a beginner's pack and it was absolutely awful. I upgraded to a bunch of other ones after that, and then I found this. I found the Palo Santo edge beveler. This particular one is a number 1. I'm not sure what the wood is on the handle. I just like the grain of it, hence why I picked it. And it is a hollow ground beveler, which means the back of it, as you'll see in these B-roll shots, the back of it is hollowed out, allowing it to glide over the edge really well. I've never had to sharpen this. With cheaper, less quality tools, I've had to sharpen them really regularly or strop them really regularly to keep them at the point where they don't scuff up the edge of my project. Now with this Palo Santo one, I don't know what kind of steel it is. I'm not a materialologist, I'm not sure that's a word, but I'm not one. However, what I do know is that this steel holds an edge real well. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. I've never had to sharpen this, and all I've ever had to do is run it over my strop a couple times. I've had it for 2 years, kind of says it all. Now, don't waste your money on crappy edge bevelers thinking, oh, they'll do, because the worst thing that can happen is you're right at the end of your project, you've glued it together, you've spent hours stitching it, you've got that perfect look to it. The final thing to do is to bevel it and burnish it. Don't. Because what will happen is that you use a shitty tool and it will scuff up the edge, it will grab the leather, it will tear the leather, and you'll have a really bad day. You will have wasted a day's work and you'll have nothing to show for it. So buy a good beveler. I promise you, you won't regret it. Next up, we've got a tool that I absolutely love. Once I found this brand, never went back. Ever. I've used versions of these tools from more companies than I can possibly count, and this is by far the best, in my opinion. It is the KS Blade Punch pricking iron. Now, the reason I love it is because up to a certain depth, let me just measure it for you. The usable depth of these teeth is 10 mil. That's ridiculously thick. So you can punch through pretty much any leather you want, apart from something like a bridal leather. You can punch through that leather with this pricking iron without any trouble at all, and it leaves such a beautiful mark on both front and back. It's phenomenal. Don't waste your money on shitty knockoffs. Buy the real thing. There are other manufacturers out there like Cinebox that are as good. Personally, I haven't used them. I've heard good things about them. The shape and size of the teeth is very slightly different, and that's why people like each one. It's like liking Mercedes versus Audi, both made well, made differently. Coming in next is a twofer. We have a diamond and a roundel. Now, even if you're using a pricking iron like a KS Blade Punch instead of something like a Blanchard, which just marks the surface, it doesn't punch all the way through, you're going to need an awl at some point. Even if I can punch all the way through that leather, I may not want to. I may want to punch through the top layer and then glue it together and then all through the rest of it. It depends on the leather, depends on the project, depends on a whole variety of things. For me, even if I can go all the way through it, sometimes I don't, and in that case I will need a diamond tool. This one is made by a French maker. I've talked about him in the past. I think his name is pronounced David Jerome, but I'm not entirely certain. His email will be in my description box below, along with all of the rest of these tools. I've done a review on this awl itself. This is a titanium awl. I'm not the blade and the ferrule and the bit down the middle is titanium. Please go and watch my other video if you want to see a more in-depth video on this. I've never had to sharpen it, ever. That may be a running theme in this so far, but I've never had to sharpen this awl, and it has behaved beautifully. There's no blowout on the back. Don't waste your money on poorly made awls. I've used a whole bunch. This is my favourite one, and it's absolutely necessary when you're starting leatherwork. As I mentioned before, this is a twofer. The other one is a roundel, a good roundel, and this is used for a multitude of purposes. If you are doing a corner stitch, you never want to use a diamond awl or a diamond pricking iron on a round hole. It just makes the whole project look cheap. Instead, you want to use a roundel, and that's because you get a much nicer angle to those stitches. This is one of those tools that I've had for all of about a week. I love it. It was not expensive. I think it was about £30, $40. It's from Japan, and it's actually phenomenally light. It weighs nearly nothing. I absolutely love this thing. It's handmade. Even the pointy awl on the end is handmade. It's crazy. I'm not sure how he does it. But you will need one of these things. You can also use it to scratch things. So if you're making something out of vegetable tan and you want to mark a corner, or you want to mark a glue line or whatever it might be, you'll need a roundel, also known as a scratch awl, and I can highly recommend this one. Also involved in hitting things, we have a maul. So the difference between a hammer and a maul is a maul is round, a hammer is a hammer. It's a bar with a hammer head on it. This has a round hammer head basically. This is made of some sort of plastic. I'm not entirely sure what. I think it might be Delrin. Not entirely certain. Please forgive me on that. It's made by a maker in the US called Barry King. I'll link to his website and the website of the place in the UK I bought this. It's quite heavy. It's probably 700 grams or something, just less than a kilo. And as you can see from the head of it, it's been well loved. It's been well used. I use it daily. The handle is solid, and you're going to need one of these for any or a hammer for pretty much everything you do in leatherwork. Whether you're marking, punching, stitching, if you go down the tooling route, if you're doing pretty much anything with leather, you will need a mallet or a maul. Now this list, let me just premise this list before we go any further by saying this is not, you need to buy this exact tool. These are the ones I use and I love. You don't need to buy these exact tools. These are the types of tools that you need in order to start leatherwork. It's not, these are the only tools in the world that are any good. It's not like that, because I haven't tried every tool in the world. I love these ones, but these are, you need this type of tool. Anyway, moving on. The last hitty thing, and the last thing to do with kind of stitching, is a hammer, a metal hammer. Now, you never want to hit a metal tool with a metal hammer, because you'll damage both things, unless of course you're doing something like pullage, which is essentially riveting a piece of hardware on. It's a very traditional method. I'll do a video on that at some point, either here or on my my other platform that I teach on. But this is made by Blanchard. I absolutely love the shape of this. I've used a whole bunch of different hammers. I've used ones made in the Second World War. This is the one that I use for metal on metal, so for pullage, because it scratches and dents the head, which I don't want to do to my nice hammer. And I love the shape of this because it's got the flats on the tops and the sides, and then the half flats on the corners, which means that if you want to get a really nice crisp line to your hammering, it's a really good shape for that. You may be asking yourself, why do you need a hammer for leatherwork? Now the simple answer is for tapping down stitches. What do I mean by that? Well, after you've stitched through the holes that you've pricked with your pricking iron, the holes will be quite big and open. Now, before you give it to someone, before you use it yourself, you want to close those holes. You want to seal them shut. One, so the stitches don't shift, and two, so that it locks everything in place and moisture and things can't get into the holes. Also, it looks much better when you do it. So that leads me on to the first thing I did when I got this hammer, and it was to polish the head. As you can see there, and as you'll see in the B-roll, the head is mirror polished. It took me quite a long time. You have to hand sand it first and then use a polisher, but it's well worth it, because if you use a hammer that has scratches on the head, you'll put scratches into your leather good. It's that simple. You'll also dent it if you have hard edges to your hammer. You don't want that. So instead of that, you need to polish it to mirror polish and smooth the edges of the hammer head. We have two left, we're almost there. So the next thing is a utility blade, and I don't mean like a Stanley knife, which people here in the UK would know, or like a box cutter. Don't mean that at all. I mean a Japanese or similar utility knife. I have one here that I'm showing you, and one here obviously that is not in this list, but it's the same kind of thing. And the one that's not in this list, it's made by a company called Epros. This one here, it's mainly a skiving knife, but you can use it as a utility knife. The one that I'm showing you in this list though is a Japanese utility knife, also known as a hand skiver. And the reason it's super important to have is not because you can use it as a utility knife, which is why the handle is this shape, so you can wrap your thumb around the top, is because you use it to skive down the edges of your leather. I've done a video on a hand skiving, so I won't go too much into detail with that, but you need a knife that is similar to this. It's a very low profile blade that you can get super low to the leather and get a really shallow skive going. So that's really important to have, especially when you're moving up to more fine leather goods. This one is made by a company called Okada. Big fan of them. My Roundel is also made by them. Beautifully made Japanese tools, phenomenally well crafted. Like, the craftsmanship on these is phenomenal, and when you're as much into your crafting as I am, the craftsmanship of the tools that you buy, for me anyway, is super important. So this is made beautifully, it holds an edge fantastically, and it's very easy to resharpen. Now last, but certainly not least, is kind of a twofer, not really. It's a more traditional knife. Now, you may be looking at this and thinking, oh, there's nothing traditional about it at all. Kind of, but kind of not. So it's really a blade in a blade holder, and it's a replacement for something like a scalpel or a box cutter. The handle, the blade holder, is made by Blanchard, the same people that make the hammer that I showed you before. Same people make it. It's solid brass, has two grub screws in it for adjusting your blade. Now the blade inside is made by a company called Chartermade. I'll link to everything in the description below. They are a couple in South Africa who make some of the best looking knives I've ever seen. I've only tried a couple of them, but I swear by the brass knife that they make, this one in particular. The reason it pokes out the end, people always ask me, oh, why does the blade poke out the end? It's because it gives you loads of space to sharpen your blade. Like, this will give you 10 years of sharpening or something silly like that before you have to replace it. Because if you sharpen your blade once a week, once a month, whatever, you have to get through 2 inches of metal, taking off a tiny amount each time before, or even more than that, even 4 inches of metal, 5 inches of metal before you have to change your blade. It's not pointy as such, it's got this very interesting point to it, and that is for shipping more than anything else, and it also helps with not poking yourself. But it's got a really nice single-sided bevel. I absolutely love this thing. It's also made of very high carbon steel, so again, easy to sharpen, easy to maintain and keep sharp on a strop. And the benefit of it is that you have a really pretty looking knife as well, because you can change out the blade in this blade holder. I believe the blade holder was £30 if I'm not mistaken. The blade itself is like 60, I want to say. I'm probably wrong, but all the information will be down below. And this thing is wonderful. The weight of it, brilliant. You can polish it up and give it a really high gloss finish. I do that occasionally when I'm feeling shiny, but normally I keep it unpolished simply because I use it so much. It gets tarnished, it gets patinaed, as the buzzword is at the moment. And I kind of like that on something that I use this often. It's kind of inviting to me that I know that it's patinaed because I use it hours and hours a day and it looks like I do, and I appreciate that. I really do. So this is the Charter Made blade in the Le Indispensable, which is what it says on the handle, Blanchard blade holder. That's what this combo is. It's a mouthful. Couldn't recommend it enough. You can go the cheapo route and buy an X-Acto knife or a scalpel or something. And people do say to me, oh, why do you spend lots of money on a knife that you can buy a razor sharp blade out of a box? I used to do that. I used to buy really cheap scalpel blades and just change them out. I'd change them out 10-15 times a day. This is my job. I do it for 10 to 12 hours a day. I do long days, and it was kind of bugging me the amount of metal I was throwing out, because when you do that as much as I did it over the course of months, it adds up to like kilos and kilos of aluminium. And yes, I know you can recycle aluminium, or aluminum as the Americans say. No offense if you're American, obviously no issue with that at all. I just find aluminum quite funny. I just have a problem with throwing out that much metal. It was one of the reasons I bought this in the first place, is because I don't like throwing out things that I don't have to. It's why I try and cut my leather as economically as I can. It's why I buy most of the tools I do, is because most of the tools I now buy will last me until I hand them off to my children that I don't have. So they're tools that I can look at and know, okay, I'm not putting over the course of my career tons of metal, maybe hundreds of kilos of aluminium into a landfill. I'm not leaving them in bins for the children to find and cut themselves with. I don't do that, but anyway, it was a joke. It's just, and it's nice to know that I have something that was crafted by hand by someone who's spent years perfecting what they do, and I enjoy that. That's part of what I enjoy with tools. Not everything I buy is handmade. I don't think it is anyway, but a lot of it's hand finished, and I kind of like that. Obviously, it would take me hours to go through every single tool I have in my arsenal. There are tools that I honestly couldn't do my job without. However, this list is purely designed as a beginner's list. I'm looking to get into leatherwork. What tools do I need? As most people that are looking to get in are not looking to spend thousands and thousands of pounds on huge amounts of tools. Also, when you're just starting out, you don't really need it, because you need to learn your tools slowly. You need to learn when to use which one. You need to learn how each one works best. Like some of my tools I won't touch for a month, but then they come in really clutch when I need them. But again, this is only something that you find out when you buy your tools slowly. You buy the mistake I made was I bought a beginner's pack off Amazon. It was terrible, and then I upgraded all of them at once, and I never used half of them for the first 6 months. You need to have tools that you need to have a small selection, like the 7 I listed today, or 8 if you count the toothers, that you learn to use. And then as you learn to use them and you think, okay, actually I need this one and I need this one, or I need to change this one for this one, you can do that. But it's only something that you do after a period of time. If I just jumped into Leatherwork and bought everything I have here, I'd probably never use half of it, because I'd, one thing, be put off, and two thing, not know how to. So thank you so much for watching this comprehensive guide on the 7 tools you absolutely need to start leatherwork. I super appreciate it. If you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe, as I have lots more content coming out. I've been a bit slow to do it recently, simply because if you go to my last video, you'll know why. Please don't forget to subscribe, like the video if you like it, leave a comment, and let me know what you found. It's a big world out there, and there's probably tools I haven't heard of that I would absolutely love to give a go. So thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Take care.